My name is TJ. I was the executive director over at Ranked Choice New York starting back in January. Once I found out I was moving to Hoboken, realized, I'll have to pass on the torch to who was our previous lead organizer, Julia Mensch. And she's going to do a great job over in New York, and hope to bring some of what I've learned from New York over to New Jersey and vice versa. So what happened in New York City? Got this agenda right here, so I'm going to take us through how it started, the positions that ranked choice voting covered, the election itself, some ranked choice voting wins, and then how we move forward together. So whenever we're ready, we'll get this thing going. Cool. So in 2018, New York City Council approved a charter revision committee to look at a series of questions in order to revise the city's charter, one of which being ranked choice voting. It passed overwhelmingly in this committee, brought to the ballot on 2019, and then almost 75% of voters, almost 3/4 of voters approved of it in 2019. So, right off the bat, tons of support for ranked choice voting, making ranked choice voting a soon-to-be reality just 2 years later. So after that, it really gets down to how this system works, right? So it's ranked choice voting works differently depending on the city, wherever it's from. So in New York City, you can rank up to 5 candidates. If nobody receives 50% of the vote, instant runoff process occurs until 2 candidates remain. This was deliberate wording just so that we can get to the furthest extent possible to see, how the public supported all the candidates, as opposed to just once someone did 50%. If there's any more room to, push it up to 54, for a more accurate count. That was the idea there. But like I said, everywhere does it differently. And, what works in New York City might be a little bit different from what could work here in New Jersey. So we'll see how all of that gets fleshed out over time. But so more on the actual election. This is what people tuned in for, right? Because most people don't dig into the law. We have a very unique group of people here where we're plugged in. So this is what people cared about. Ranked choice voting applied to 5 positions: mayor, public advocate, comptroller, the borough presidents, so 5 different boroughs, and then city council as well. So, everyone here, we all understand that each of these positions is super, super important. But, again, even going further down the funnel, people care most about mayor. So we're going to focus a lot here on the mayor race. So these ones outlined in red, according to Ballotpedia, these are the ones who received the most media attention and who most routinely polled the highest. So it's Eric Adams, Catherine Garcia, Ray McGuire, Scott Stringer, Maya Wiley, and Andrew Yang. And it's, general knowledge that whoever wins the Democratic primary in New York City is likely going to be the next mayor of New York City. It's a very Democrat-leaning city. And in the run-up to the election, June 22nd of this past year, ranked choice voting got a ton of support, from some organizations that everyone here probably already knows and loves. Represent Us, Fair Vote, Common Cause, Rank the Vote NYC, Unite America. And then we also got, a ton of support from currently elected officials, which is always huge to be able to, point to an office and say, hey, look, they support this too. We got the Attorney General, Letitia James, Jumaane Williams, the public advocate, Liz Kruger, Brad Lander, Alessandra Biaggi, Antonio Reynoso, and then mayoral candidates who supported ranked choice voting too. From that top pack included Yang, Garcia, Wiley, Stringer, McGuire. Eric Adams had a little bit of concern in the run-up about this new voting system, talking about potentially how it could disenfranchise minority voters and the language barrier. But ultimately, the support was behind ranked choice voting. So, going into the campaign for education. So this was the main worry, and this is what Adams kind of harped on, was the fact that we need to get people ready for this new voting system, right? Because anytime there's a change to how we vote, to how we do politics, there's going to be concern that we do it the right way. So here I've got some numbers. We're looking at 5.5 million registered voters in New York City. The education campaign ran a little late. In the run-up, people felt that there wasn't enough being done, and that was, that was the main concern. There were also some concerns from city councilors claiming that it disadvantaged minorities along, echoing Eric Adams' sentiment. And some city councilors actually sued to overturn ranked choice voting in New York City, but that was ultimately squashed, and ranked choice voting went ahead as planned. 2 months before the election, de Blasio signed into law a $15 million voter education campaign specifically for ranked choice voting. Crunched the numbers a little bit, thought it was interesting. It came out to about $3.50 per registered Democrat / Republican for this education campaign in a 2-month window. And as you'll see a little bit later on in this presentation, we'll see just how effective that actually was. Now onto absentees. So this is probably the post-election biggest storyline that didn't have anything to do with the results itself. This was more of a procedural issue. New York state law has a stipulation that the Board of Election can't process absentee ballots until 1 week after Election Day, followed by a 1-week curing process. So we have an automatic 2-week delay on when ballots are received. So after election night, we're looking at least into early July. People want results now. So people don't want to wait. And the compromise was the Board of Election giving preliminary results. Well, when they give the preliminary results, they accidentally included 135,000 test ballots. So that confused a lot of people. New York Times, Wall Street Journal, all these media outlets, rightfully harping on the fact that this was some incompetency, but not a ranked choice voting issue. This was a Board of Elections issue, and so that's some of the messaging that we worked around on that front. As we go to the final results, voter turnout. So 25% of registered Democrats came out to vote, 10.5% of registered Republicans. This was the highest turnout since 2001, and roughly the same turnout to the most comparable election, where there wasn't a term-limited incumbent, which was 2013. So roughly the same turnout there. And then we'll get to the final results, and we see that Eric Adams ran away with it. So in the run-up, there were the 6 that consistently polled the highest, that consistently got the most media coverage. It really came down to the top 4 when all things were said and done. Yang was the first of the 4 eliminated. Then it came down to Adams, Wiley, and Garcia. Garcia edged Wiley after the redistribution of Yang's votes, and then Adams took the lead, and Adams is now going to be facing off against Republican Curtis Sliwa in the general in just under a month. So into the messaging, into the wins. If it can work in New York City, it can work anywhere, right? That's what we get down to. New York City is the largest, most populous place to use ranked choice voting in the U.S. now, and if it could work with the BOE that is releasing test ballots accidentally, if we're starting an education campaign 2 months before the election itself, and as we'll see in the upcoming slides, all the wins, if it could work here, it could really work anywhere. And the first point here is, working together. So although Eric Adams wasn't a fan of it, too, he voiced his concerns on this. But Yang and Garcia campaigned together in the week run-up to the election. So, it's always nice to see some of the higher-profile candidates really publicly endorse this system of ranked choice voting and, embracing the change that is, positive campaigning coming together. And then also organizations like the Freelancers Union giving out co-endorsements. So, rank them 1, rank them 2, or we co-endorse, 1 and 2, just saying that, hey, we support a multitude of candidates as a departure from, just the black and white, you only get one choice thing. And also, I like this one a lot, no sore losers, right? So after the election, obviously there's one winner, but some of the candidates who lost, have still been very supportive publicly about ranked choice voting. Yang actually went on to, start his own party, the Forward Party, where the major tenet is ranked choice voting. Maya Wiley, I lost the New York City mayoral race, but women and minorities win with ranked choice voting. And then the New York City Speaker, Corey Johnson's office, dismissed his bid for a new vote on ranked choice voting, basically coming out and saying, this is what the people wanted. So, even though I lost, it's a better system, and that's something that, I think speaks to what April touched on earlier is, cooling the temperature just a little bit, and not getting so heated on stuff like this. So the next major win is more representatives. So some studies show that, ranked choice voting opens the door to new candidates, especially non-traditional and diverse candidates. And we're looking at New York City Council right now. Voters elected first, the city's second mayor of color, second, a likely majority women city council, and the most council members of color ever. And in a city where women make up 52% of the population and 58% are BIPOC, this is great progress. It's showing that the system really works as intended. We're also going to see the first Muslim American woman on city council. We're going to see the first Black lesbian woman on city council. We're going to see an increase in the number of Asian Americans and women on the city council. So it's just all around bringing more representation to it's making the city council and our elected offices look more like the city in which these voters are voting for these candidates. And the main takeaway, after all things said and done, no matter how late the education campaign started, whatever the issue may be, at the end of the day, voters loved it. So you look at all the exit polling data, over 3/4 of voters want to use it again. Over 80% ranked more than one candidate, even though it's just the option, not the obligation to. And this whole argument that ranked choice voting is too complex, people won't get it. We can count to 3. So 95% of voters found it simple to complete. It might be a way to bring out more people to the polls too, according to the Citizen Data exit poll. 37%, indicated that it might be more likely to get them to the polls. Maybe they're more excited that they might not be wasting their vote. They might not feel like their vote's being thrown away. So, I look at New York City as a great case study on how ranked choice voting, obviously it's going to have its detractors, but overwhelmingly, I think that the support is behind it. And so moving forward, April touched on this earlier, it's the grassroots. It starts here. It starts with us. It's talking to our parents. It's talking to your kids, talking to our friends, our neighbors, your significant other, your dog, practice your elevator pitch to him, the little guy. And really, just spreading the word and going out there, talking to people, speaking engagements, working with city councilors. And just, one thing I've learned from Ranked Choice New York is that, once you talk to somebody who doesn't know anything about it, it can take as little as 10 seconds for them to be like, oh, wait, yeah, that makes it, yeah, I'm in. It's as simple as that. And then the second piece of the pie, the part that I'm super excited to work with you guys on is once we support it, once people agree that it makes sense, activate them. How do we get them to volunteer? How do we get them to talk to their parents, their friends, their neighbors? How do we get them to donate? How do we get them to talk to their local elected officials? And that is the part that I'm super, super excited to build out with all of you guys. So that's my little presentation on New York City. Thank you guys so much. Really looking forward to everything you guys are, getting caught up to speed on everything you guys are working on, and then, helping out wherever I can.